webcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, where you are. Welcome to our second presentation of the day and our second day of the ALM QC Expert Week. Thanks all for joining today. Today we're going to talk about HPALM and HPQC Enterprise. Melinda Clover is going to give a presentation. She's a functional architect with HPALM. During the presentation, you can note down your questions in the questions area, and Melinda will answer your questions at the end of the presentation. Even after the presentation, if you still have questions, you can go into our forums, and our entitled forums are private forums, as this session is only available for customers with a valid support contract, where you could submit your questions regarding this presentation or any other questions that you might have on ALM or QC. We'll go over that more at the end of the presentation. So I'm going to hand it over to Melinda, who will start the presentation. Melinda?
Thanks, Bill. All right, good morning, everybody. So as Bill said, what we're going to do is take a look at HPALM and Quality Center Enterprise. And I'm going to focus on a specific area, which is our new web client. And I'm sure many of you may have seen this web client. If you're an existing customer, you may have downloaded and installed this in a test environment to check it out. It's something that we released initially about 1.5 years ago with version 12. And, you know, again, it's something you can use today side by side with your .NET client modules, you know, the client modules that are downloaded to someone's desktop. And we decided it might be a good idea to really point out some of the features that are available on the web client, as pretty much our overall direction is to eventually make it possible so that customers can move away from the .NET client modules and only be using the web client going forward. As I'm sure many of you would understand, when we talk about web client, we actually mean that we have written the code in JavaScript and HTML5. So this is, you know, a departure from our .NET architecture, and it means that you can run this client on a variety of different web browsers. Okay, so you're no longer restricted to just Internet Explorer with the .NET architecture that we have today. You can use Chrome, you can use Firefox, you can even use Safari. So there's a lot of benefits around the web client. I think you've already probably thought of some, right? The fact that, first of all, we don't have to download any components to a user's desktop. Literally, when you're working with web client, it's just about accessing a URL. So as you can imagine, this really will cut down on the amount of administration for the application in general. You also are going to get away from some of the challenges today, especially if you're working with some of the different add-ins that come with the product, is that your users might need to have administrator privileges. And all of this, it kind of disappears, you know, with the web client, as again, all that's happening is users accessing a URL. There's nothing that needs to be available on their desktop in order to use the application. And because we know it's going to take some time for us to deliver a lot of features on that web client piece, and we're going to get into this as we go through the application, you know, about what's specifically there today. And, you know, we also may not end up delivering everything that you're familiar with today on the .NET architecture. So we've set it up right now so that you can run web client and your .NET client, or the classic client here, side by side, meaning they're both hitting the same database. So if you have some teams that it's possible for them to work with the web client, you know, maybe this is a set of business analysts, you know, they could be entering requirements into projects on the web client side, and these same requirements and information is going to show up for users that are working on the .NET client. So today we have kind of this seamless configuration between these two modules. And this is to help you transition as well, you know, over time. And I think I was just talking about this, the fact that we have the same database underneath, and obviously data integrity, everything is enforced and handled appropriately there. Again, just so we can sort of ease you into some of these changes as you determine which groups are going to be able to use the web client and when you're going to be able to move them over there. But I think probably the key message here is to understand that, again, this is going to be our platform for the future. It's going to be this new JavaScript HTML5. And, you know, you may have heard us talk some with our roadmap. There's even going to be some other platform shifts that take place. And the whole idea is eventually that we want to help customers move away from that .NET client infrastructure, which is going to become outdated here, you know, potentially in the next few years as well, even from a Microsoft perspective. And again, lots of benefits here. I think the key one is you're going to see a lowering of administrative costs because there's going to be less to do as far as maintenance goes. If you think about, you know, applying patches, and some of what happens today when you're applying patches, you might have to shut down the entire system for, say, 2 or 3 days and get these patches applied to all these different desktop machines. Well, in the future, again, with that web client module, you're not going to have to go through that. You're only going to be patching the server itself. So it's really going to make some changes to how, you know, how you're managing the application, the amount of maintenance that you need to spend on the application, and the amount of resources as well. So let's talk about what some of the features are that are currently available on the web client today. One of the areas that we spent a lot of time on is around requirements. And to be specific, it's around requirements definition. If you take a look at the product today, we have a lot of what I call administrative capabilities around requirements. You know, you can enter requirements, you can categorize them, you can group them together into different hierarchies. You know, the team members can view them and add comments and things like that. What we don't have a lot of is, you know, ability to maybe define some of the different pieces. Like if I'm starting from the beginning and I'm going to author something, you know, we have a text editor in there today, but it has some limitations. So one of the things we wanted to do, and this came about after a lot of discussion with various customers as to how they're doing their requirements processes today. And what came out of this is, you know, people are struggling with authoring requirements in the product. You know, it needed to have an update to some of the capabilities that make it easier for business analysts to work there and do the actual writing of the requirement. And also to provide them with sort of the appropriate perspective or view when they're writing these requirements. Because you might be working on one section or one set of requirements, but you might need to see all of the other requirements that maybe some other folks are working on for a particular release. So I'm going to show you in a minute here kind of what we've added into the web client side here to better support this. And obviously another big part of this, organizations, you know, in spite of a lot of agile practices that we're seeing more and more companies adopting, we also see a lot of these same companies still producing, you know, some kind of requirements document or planning document. So you're also going to find that you're able to essentially export from your single document view, export that information into PDF files, so you can either email that around to different teams or edit it accordingly, you know, while you're offline. And then in general, you're going to see a lot of different changes to the user interface itself. And this will go not only for requirements, but for all the different entities, you know, as we build them out on this new module. But some areas that are going to seem similar will be like the tree views. So we still have kind of the standard tree view that you're used to with the hierarchy. But the way you're going to work with the information is somewhat different. You're going to see our filtering has changed. You're going to be able to tag records, which is a little bit different. And we've also updated our traceability view, all right, to include really more information, and we'll talk about that as well. But first, to give you an idea, first of all, you get a nice screenshot here that is showing you really what this web UX looks like. And what we're looking at here, we're in the requirements mode, and we're taking a look at this traceability view. And this is quite a bit different maybe from what you're used to, where we had the test coverage views on the .NET client, and it's really showing you a lot more about just tests and requirements together. Well, we wanted to bring some more information over, so we've got defects listed here as well. And all I've done is, you know, I highlighted a requirement And on the right-hand side, in this main pane, what's getting displayed are all the relationships it has to other entities. So it's also showing me what are the other requirements that this particular requirement is linked to. And it's giving you a little bit of information about the relationship. Is this a requirement that's dependent on the previous one I selected, or is it something that's, coming after, right? I've got my list of defects here. I can even see what's open and closed, or for instance, if something is reopened. And I also have all of the test information so that I have an understanding of, are we running the test currently, what's been run, what's been passed, and kind of what status these are in. So just wanting to give you a lot more information. Something else we've been focused on with the web client is to make it easier for the users, to move around, to navigate and find information, and to have appropriate views that are showing you kind of all the different data points that you need to see. If we look across the top, you're going to get some other changes that we've made here. One is kind of this breadcrumbs trail, so that it's easier for users to go back and forth and not get lost if they click through menus. And then you can see up here kind of how we've got the add filter. And there's some differences here as to how I'm going to create the filters. I can still create them, I can still save them, and I kind of have my own workspace here where some of that will be saved for me. So this, again, we're in requirements. We're taking a look at what we call the manage mode. And the new piece, or, a lot of this is new, right? But the really new piece here is around the authoring mode. And that's what, imagine I clicked on that author mode button. And what you're seeing here, I'm still showing the tree structure, but I could actually hide that so I have the full screen to work with. This is our new text editor. This is an open source text editor that has a lot of different plugins that enable a lot of different capabilities. So right now we have a lot of things that you're used to, and probably some new things, around what you can do with the text. We're always striving to kind of make it as flexible as possible if you're going to be writing your requirements here. And I could be in this mode and even enter new requirements. You kind of get that idea right here with the box that says Add Child. So if I'm just working and entering different requirements, I could go ahead and click and add in a new one, and it'll number it accordingly. The numbering is just getting applied based on where I start on the tree structure. So I click on a particular level, and it's going to start, I clicked on, it looks like search conditions, and it's starting with flight reservation service. I may have moved this in the screenshot a little bit, but you get the idea that it's going to show me each of the different requirements as I look down here. Oh, actually, here's search conditions here, and give them a number. And this is the piece where, I was talking earlier about giving you sort of a single document view where every requirement on here is something that's part of, say, a particular document that I need to deliver or that the team is going to work from. And if need be, at any point in time, I'm going to be able to come up here and say I need to export that and save that off as a particular version of our document. So a lot of nice enhancements around authoring. A lot of this was driven from customer feedback and kind of understanding how people are still working with requirements and what the business analysts are really looking for as part of a requirements product. So another area that we spent some time on is defects. Now here, you're not going to see a lot of differences quite yet. We really took a lot of our core functionality and rewrote it. Where possible, we've made updates. So again, you're going to see changes as far as tagging and filtering. And we'll talk about a few more things that you're going to be able to do. But probably I think the most important piece about having defects on the web is that now, again, you're able to offer this to different groups in the organization who may have had troubles or couldn't install, say, the IE infrastructure on their machine. And I'm thinking specifically here more of your development organizations, who a lot of times have very different configurations, because they're building out code. And a lot of them just maybe aren't even working with IE, so they didn't want to have that installed. Now, if you're taking a look at web client and even just using the defects module, this might be a way that you're able to bring some of these other groups on board, because now they could file defects, in the application via Chrome, for instance, which is very popular for development purposes. I've got a nice screenshot here to give you an idea of what Defects looks like. And something else we've added, this is part of our most current release, which is 12.2. 12.2 was released in January. And for the web client, there were a lot of different things we worked on, but one of them is what we call inline editing. So if you're working in the grid view, which is what you see here, and let's say I need to go ahead and update a particular status, I don't need to click into the detailed view. All I need to do is actually select that particular field, and you'll see the little caret there where I've got, my list of values, and I can just select from that list of values and go ahead and update the status of that defect right there. So again, we're trying to work on time-saving measures. Why do we make users click into, multiple menus in order to get something accomplished? When most likely I've got, filters I saved for the defects that matter to me, and I just want to run my filter and go through and make appropriate updates. Okay, so what else is going on, as far as, say, project configuration on the web client side? And you're going to find there are a lot of things that are going to be changing as compared to the .NET world. Some of them are going to seem familiar. Some of them are going to just have interfaces, whereas on the .NET side, maybe this was something you built out with workflow code. So let me talk about a couple of different things here. One is forms. Now today, if you want to organize particular pages in the product, let's say on your defects module, you've got some different groups and they need to have different fields that they view, for instance. And you want to set it up so that when they log in, they see the pages that make sense, for what they work on. Today, you need to actually build that out and kind of configure that using our workflow code, right? Which means you have to have a fairly technical individual that understands how to put that together. It might take some time to put that together and test it out and get it working the way you want it to. Well, good news is on the web client side, we've built out an actual interface to handle this directly in the application. Okay, so you no longer need a technical person to put this together. You just might have your business owner who is going to go out. They can basically configure the page how they'd like it to appear. So they can add sections, they can add fields, and eventually, I don't think this is here quite yet, but eventually the idea is I would assign a particular form to the different groups that I've entered, that are using the product. So I can really tailor the display to the different teams and what it is that they need to view. And I'll show you a screenshot of this in a minute here. Probably one of the largest changes for the existing customer base is what's going to happen with workflow. In the new world, we have what's called business rules. And business rules are designed to represent, what you do with workflow code today. And again, like the forms piece, the business rules is an actual interface in the product where you're able to kind of click through. It's almost like a wizard, and you're going to be able to set up, with all the different entities. You're going to be able to select different fields. You're going to be able to apply conditions and then apply specific actions to take place. So conditions might be, when status changes, to reviewed. The action might be send an email to the team to understand that something has been completed. So right now, we've talked a lot about how the web client and the .NET client today sitting on the same database, a lot of what you enter is viewable in both sides. Well, that is not the case with the workflow code and the business rules. All right, so today our workflow code is embedded in the .NET client module. So there was no way that we could really work with that when we took a look at this new world where we've got a web client sitting on the server. It means everything has to be server-based. So that's why we built out this business rules engine on the server side. And so for existing customers, what they're going to need to do when you start taking a look at the web client and potentially rolling that out, this is the time really to sit down and take a look at the workflow code that you've designed. I talk with a lot of customers, and you know, over the years, obviously I've worked here for 5 years now, and have had lots of customer conversations. You know, workflow, you know, I run into customers that have very heavy customized workflow, and I run into customers that don't use workflow, you know, hardly at all. Obviously, if you are barely using workflow, it's going to be easier for you to adopt the web client. But if you do have heavier workflow code, it's time now, I think, to sit down and really kind of evaluate, okay, what is the workflow code that I have in place? Why do I have it in place? Is it still relevant? You know, a lot of customers build out workflow when they first implement the product, and they don't necessarily revisit it even as they upgrade, you know, to newer versions of the product. And as we know, you know, the product changes over time. Sometimes maybe what you're using the workflow code to do, you may not need that any longer because the product has evolved and better supports something. So it's a good time to evaluate workflow code and determine what do you want to keep, you know, as you are looking at the projects, say, that are going to be used on the web client side. And then take a look at what I have available on the business rules side, because this is a work in progress. We're still building out a lot of capabilities here. In 12.2, we delivered some more, and we'll talk about that as we go through this. But you're probably not going to have everything. The goal right now for us is to make sure that with the business rules, you can basically build out, say, 80% of what you do today with workflow code. And then we intend to also provide like a scripting toolkit. So you'll still have some flexibility, and again, this will be with code, so it does require more technical people, but for certain, you know, situations, you're probably still going to want to use some code so that maybe you can connect to, say, a third-party product or call out to something else, you know, that isn't a part of the ALM or QC environment. So we definitely understand that, and there's definitely going to be customers that will need to do that. But for the vast majority of you, we're hopeful that you just need to configure, you know, in the business rules interface, all the different process rules that you're going to have. And we'll talk about that some more as we go through all this. So I have a picture here, another screenshot, just to show you, give you an idea of kind of what the customization pages look like on the web client side. And for instance, we're taking a look here at the forms pages. So you get the idea of what I was talking about earlier, where I can go through and, you know, I see section 1 here, and I'm able to add the different fields. You know, I give this a name and I can save it. And then eventually, you know, I'm going to be able to add this, you know, to different groups, so that when that group, you know, if I'm a member of a certain group, I log in and I see all the appropriate fields. So what are some of the specific changes that came along with our 12.2 deliverable? I've pointed out a couple of these already. One is the inline editing, so the fact that within the grids now you can actually type and use the drop-down values to select and make changes. We've also started looking at, you know, accessibility, and you know, many of you are familiar with Section 508, and obviously with software there are a lot of different things we need to do in order to make it usable for folks who have various limitations on visibility and things like that. So you're going to find keyboard shortcuts are available. And something else we've been working on, you know, when you have a grid view, for instance, and you've got your list of information, you're going to be able now to export these off to Excel, so you can work with things in Excel. And then I mentioned how obviously we were doing a lot of work around business rules, and there are several things that was added, you know, into the product with 12.2 in order to better support that. So you're going to find some more capabilities here. For instance, you know, I'm able to specify, you know, a specific user. For instance, if there's an owner that's associated with an entity, I'm going to be able to use that as part of a business rule I might create. And I have better support for validation rules, and also this capability where I'm able to copy a value from another field. Okay, so this is also something that will drive like what happens with drop-down values and things like that. A few other UI type changes, some enhancements that we made with web clients. One of these is, let's say I want to email somebody a specific link, to check out, let's say in this case it's a requirement. I can go ahead and do that, and I'm actually going to get a view of that particular requirement. You can see in the little email box here, you can actually go ahead and take a look at that directly without getting into the product. And another really nice feature, and this, might seem small, but anything that we do that helps people to save time is always, I think, beneficial. And so this is what we're calling bulk updates. And if you can kind of tell from the screenshot, I select several different records. And let's say in this case I am changing the priority field. I can go ahead and select the appropriate priority, and I'm updating multiple entities or multiple items here, not just one at a time, which is oftentimes what you've had to do in the past. So this will help for people who have sweeping changes where maybe there's 25 different items. You'll be able to update those all at once. Okay, and then something else we did with 12.2, we actually did work on test management. Now the thing is, due to kind of our upcoming plans around Web Client, we've made this a technology preview. So what this means is you can certainly, when you're using Web Client, you can check this out, say in a test environment, but we recommend not rolling this out in production, because if you're going to call support and try to get fixes for this, we're going to say, no, it's not supported module. It's only a tech preview for you to kind of take a look at the functionality and see what we're kind of doing around test management in general. Okay, and the reason we made this a tech preview is because going forward, there are going to be some changes to the web client. We're looking at changing some of the platform configuration, and we're also going to be changing quite a bit some of the UX itself and some of the different ways that you're building out, say, manual tests. So we really didn't want a customer to get in the situation of fully adopting the test management module when, say, in 2016, you're going to be greeted with a whole new kind of looking and feeling and, in some cases, acting test management module for the web client. But on the other hand, we really want you to see a lot of these different features because they will be available in this kind of revised web client that's going to get delivered in the future. So we'd love to get feedback and hear comments about what people think on those. And also, just for your own preparation, to start to understand processes within web client, how things might be different for users once test management, is there. So you're going to see a lot of different features here. Some are going to be very familiar, like building out manual tests. Obviously, we've already seen, the traceability view and the fact that you've got test coverage there. One of the new pieces is around environments. And we wanted to provide you with the ability to enter, all the different components that your applications under test are configured with. So your operating systems, your web servers, application servers, all the different pieces, be able to enter those and basically bring those together into different configurations that you can now assign out to the projects and to the tests. And this means now when you're running your tests, based on a lot of these different configurations, we're able to provide you with some really nice views that show exactly what happened to a specific environment config that was run. And obviously, we're working on, you're going to find the business rules now support the test entity as well. So again, this is all something that you can sort of play with and check out and start to think about, what does this mean as we consider, in the future, how we're going to move our testing groups, over to this new web client. And I've got a few screenshots in here to show you, a lot of what this looks like today. Again, this should be somewhat familiar. We've got our tests set up just like we do today in the .NET with the tree structure. What I'm doing here, I'm looking at a specific step, okay, and I'm able to take a look at all of the linked requirements directly in the same screen. So these are some of the nice UX changes that you're going to find on the web client, these split screen views where, you can see by the buttons, I can look at linked requirements, and I can even, I have some idea based on the description list here, but I can also click into these to get more information. I could also be looking at test parameters if I clicked on the parameters button. So, I've got my test steps list, and I've got parameters or linked requirements. So I'm really getting a lot of information in one view without clicking around into different menus. And then here we've got a screenshot that's giving you some idea around what this environments piece is like. And you can see the button here. It gives you, a little mouse over definition of what you're able to do here. It should look similar to like a lot of our different grids, right? And you're just going to be able to enter. You can see here, I've got the name of the specific configuration and listing out some of the different components like the operating system, for instance. And I'm able, again, to assign all these out into projects and tests, so I'm able to more closely track and, and get a lot of this information directly in the application and associated with the tests and the test runs. I know today a lot of organizations that are tracking this data, they may have to do that in Excel spreadsheets or, do attachments, back to specific tests, let's say within ALM or Quality Center Enterprise. And I think that's all I have. So it's about 9:31. I wanted to leave a lot of time because I figured there might be a lot of different questions. And I think we can go ahead and get started on those.
Melinda, there were 3 questions that have come in so far. And
okay.
I've assigned them to you, so if you look at your question area, you should see the 3 questions. If not, then I'll read them.
Okay, let me make this, a little wider here. I see them, but they're in a very small box. Oh, here we go.
Yeah,
okay.
It is small. You see it?
Yeah, now I can see it. Okay, so one of the questions is about customizing the layout of the defect screen to include fields from the test plan module. Currently, WebUI allows only, let's see, I guess the bug table or the defect fields to be available on new defect screen customization using business rules. Okay, and I guess the question might be, I don't know if they were looking at the 12.2 version or an earlier version of the web client. And I don't know if I have the answer to that because I'd have to take a look and see if you can use fields from other entities within another entity, right? So if we have the defects and we have all the fields with defects and you're able to then, set up the screen accordingly, and this is probably part of the forms world, I don't know if you're going to have access to those other, the fields from the test side. So I'd have to actually get back to you guys on that one. We can, I imagine, Bill, there's a place where we can post answers to questions after the fact.
Yeah, so what we could do is if the person that asked this question could submit that question in the form. After his presentation, I'm going to create a post for your presentation. And then once the question is asked, I'll send it to you, Melinda, and you could answer the question.
Okay, sounds good. And then there's a question about pinning. So in the .NET client today, there's a new capability that came with, I think that came with 12.2, maybe it came with 12, but basically it lets you kind of pin something to your dashboard, right? So that, let's say I'm working on a test, and no matter where I go in the application, I always want to have this pin test so that I can click on that and always get back to that really quickly. And right now, I don't know that we have plans to include that as part of the web UX, but that's a really good enhancement and something we can talk about with the UX team if we'd have some capability like that available. Okay, and then let's see, the third question. Let's see, so this is about upgrading from version 11 to version 12.2. And they're asking about, what's the impact, I guess, for existing projects. So I'm not quite sure how we answer that one either. I guess, So if you're going to migrate from 11 to 12.2, this is pretty common, right? You know, that people do upgrades to later versions. You're going to have your .NET world, and that's going to be very, you know, just like what you've always done in the past as far as upgrade processes go. We do have a lot of material out there now to help with upgrade. So for instance, we have improved our documentation. We have something called the ALM robot, which is something you can download from our HP Live Network site. And the ALM robot will help you with getting your project ready to do the upgrade. So from a .NET to .NET perspective, you really shouldn't see a huge difference from upgrades that you've done in the past. All right, it's still a lot of the same procedure. I would highly recommend you read the upgrade guide though, because since version 11, there are a lot of things that have changed, you know, architecturally in the product to some degree. And there may be some different steps that you're going to need to take. So don't assume that it's exactly the same, but it is very similar as far as upgrades go. And, you know, it's going to be, you know, it's highly recommended too that you have some sort of post-upgrade process, right, where you're going to check each of the projects that you've moved into the later version to make sure that, you know, all of the components are there. You know, it depends on what you've got connected to the project, you know, requirements and defects and tests and all of the sort of attachments and everything else. You know, you'll want to go through some sort of post-upgrade process. And I think the upgrade guide gives you some ideas on how to do that as well. But, you know, it is an upgrade. Definitely plan for, you know, some amount of time to do that. Obviously, it depends on the size of your existing database and number of projects that you have. You know, a lot of organizations will do upgrades sort of on a project-by-project basis or team-by-team basis. So it's not an all-or-nothing type of scenario. But I would just recommend checking out Robot, checking out, you know, the knowledge base and support online and our different manuals, our upgrade guide, and anything else that we have posted that will help you with that. Okay, so then there's a question here about Microsoft Excel plugins and how they work with the web client. I don't believe they do work with the web client yet. Okay, so all the plugins, I don't want to say the wrong thing. I may have to check on that, but I'm not sure that you have the Microsoft Excel plugin available yet with web client. So that's one we'll post an answer to that, you know, after the fact here.
And Melinda, maybe that the person that asked that question can also submit that in the form so that we keep track of those. We would summarize the questions, but it's always good if customers provide their questions also in the form so that other people also can benefit from it, and then everyone can see it.
Yep, sounds good. And then we've got another question here about site administration and how you're able to control whether or not the web client is available for a project. And now it is definitely something that's controlled from site admin, whether you enable or disable access to the web client. And I'm pretty sure it's on a project-by-project basis because most everything is configured that way. So it's something that when you move to, say, 12.2, it's something that you would need to go into site admin and enable for different projects if you want it to be enabled. I don't believe there's other work that needs to happen because it's just an extra module. Yeah, there may be some setup around that, but basically you do have control over which projects can access it and which don't. So you can control sort of the, you know, how the teams are going to start working with that. Okay, so then we've got a question about business rules, and let's see here, controlling kind of what fields show up. And let's see, I'm not sure about this either. Let's see, will defect business rules still accommodate seeing different fields on different screens, such as having only certain fields show up on the new defect screen and additional fields will display on an existing defect screen? My understanding is that you're going to configure this even a little bit differently, like with the forms. It's something that you're going to be able to work with here. So I think between the forms on the web client and the business rules, you're going to be able to control the fields that you want to show on the screen. Okay. And I'll try and look into that one a little bit later too, just to make sure I'm saying the right thing there. Okay, and then we've got a question about the custom scripting capabilities for the business rules and when that's going to be available. Right now, that's still kind of a future deliverable. We are trying to determine really the best technology we want to work with there, because one of the things we want to do with that scripting toolkit, we want to give people flexibility, but we don't want to give you sort of a wide open playing field like what we have today, where it's easier for a customer to build some bad workflow code and implement that and then really kind of cause problems in their system. So we'd like to have some more controls around the scripting so that you have the ability to build some pieces, but we know that it's not going to, bring your system down. So this is all still kind of in the works, and it's probably going to be a while before we've got that available. The focus right now for really the next delivery of web client is the test management and test automation pieces. So it's probably going to be, even after the next release, that you'd see more of the scripting toolkit getting presented and available. Okay, and we've got questions about business views. Will the business views and basically will the reporting mechanism be available on the web client at some point? Yes, there will be some type of reporting capabilities that we make available. And we're still kind of trying to figure out if the business views is the best way to go there, since that was designed for, a different architecture. But there definitely will be a way to do some type of report, and graphical representation that will be available. And then there's a question about where do you set up the business rules? And so this is something that's part of sort of the customization area. So on the web client, you're going to see kind of like project customization on the .NET client. You'll have a similar sort of area that you go to, and it's got the forms there, setting up of fields, and setting up of different types, and then also your business rule configuration. So it is something that eventually, you can control who has access to that. So that's all the questions I see in the queue.
Yeah, there was a question regarding the recording of this session, but I'll speak to that in my closing statement.
Yeah, do we have other questions out there?
I'm not seeing anything else, but they can always submit questions in the forums afterwards. So if you miss something, then.
And that would be very helpful, it sounds like, so that all the customers can benefit from, the questions that you guys are asking about.
Exactly.
And certainly the ones that I didn't answer will get a response, and we can post that information. Okay.
Well, Melinda, thank you very much for your time today on the presentation. For the people on the phone, also thank you very much for attending today. This session is recorded, and I will be posting something in the next hour and hour and a half in the Quality Center Support Customer Form, which is the form that's only accessible to customers and partners with a valid support ID. So you'll get that information from me. And also within that specific post, you could submit your questions to Melinda, and we'll contact Melinda or someone else within our support team. During the entire week, we have support engineers in the forums that are also ready to answer any questions you might have on ALM/QC or any of the topics that we're doing today. And otherwise, we'll find people to address your questions. I want to thank you very much for your time today. And we have one more session later on today. Hope you can join us for that. And otherwise, tomorrow and Thursday, we also have sessions. So Thanks everyone for joining. Have a nice day, and hope to see you again in another presentation or in the forums. But also, if you have feedback on this week, what we're doing with these presentations or anything, please provide your feedback, because we're trying to make these expert days and expert weeks better, and we only can learn from your experience. So thanks again, everyone, and have a nice day.